Imagine the heat of midday in ancient Samaria. A well, a woman who has learned to come alone to that well when others won't be there, and a Jewish teacher who, by every rule of his world, should have walked right past her. But he didn't. Instead, he asks her for water. In that single, simple request, one who is thirsty, reaching toward one who has what they need, this becomes a story of reaching across divides, of offering what each of them needs, of discovering beneath our differences. We share a common story of need. Because this is, on the surface, a have and have not story. A man and a woman, there's a gender divide. A Jew and a Samaritan, there's a faith and geographical divide. The respected and the marginalized, there's a classism divide. But the Gospel of John refuses to let it stay there. What begins as a transaction becomes a transformation. And what begins at a physical well opens into something no well could ever contain. Perhaps it is our own human vision, the way we so quickly sort and measure one another, that is our greatest obstacle to experiencing the world as God intends it. If we stopped cataloging others by what they have or lack, by where we come from, by our place in society's hierarchy, might we find it easier to ensure that everyone has what they need to survive and to thrive? The woman who meets Jesus at Jacob's well has much to teach us this Lenten morning. She teaches us about scarcity and abundance, about community and belonging, and above all, about the common human story of need, and how that need, honestly acknowledged, can become the very ground on which community is built. This morning, let's explore her story in 3 brief movements. First, the courage to reach across cultural and societal walls. Second, the grace of offering each other what each needs. And third, the invitation to let living water flow, to be refreshed and to refresh others in our relationships and in our world. The first thing this story shows us is the radical act of reaching across walls. How rare this is in today's modern life. We have so many walls among us. Jesus and the Samaritan woman should not have been speaking. The cultural script was written clearly. Jews and Samaritans did not associate. And men did not address women in public spaces. Those with social standing did not seek favors from those on the margins. The rules were old, deeply embedded, and widely enforced. And yet, Jesus speaks. He asks, he reaches, and communicates. The Samaritan woman came from a place of layered marginalization. She was from the northern kingdom, geographically and socially distant from the power centers of Jerusalem. She came to the well alone, in the heat of day, when the other women of the village would long since have returned home. These are not incidental details. They speak of isolation, of a life lived at the edges. And still, she engaged. She pushed back. She questioned. She refused to let simply accepting what was being offered without understanding it be the way of life. And ultimately, she opened herself to an encounter that would change not only her life, but the life of her entire community. And this is what inclusion actually looks like. Not a tidy, comfortable gesture, not a program or a policy, though those matter. It's a willingness to speak across the walls that our world has built. Walls of culture, gender, religion, class, identity, history, and to stay in the conversation even when it is uncomfortable. We see this in the story of Osab O, a tenant of Ottawa's multi-faith housing initiative. She shares with us, as a black person, being surrounded by people of different religions and cultures pushed me to understand my own identity more deeply, while learning to respect and appreciate others. I found connection in shared experiences of resilience, even when our beliefs were different. These spaces taught me empathy, confidence, and the importance of taking up space without shrinking who I am. Osab found her well at multi-faith housing. It is a well that is welcome and community care. And her presence, in turn, helped make that community what it is, a place that is itself a well of hope for all who live there. Her story and the Samaritan woman's story on this International Women's Day have similarities. Both found belonging through the courageous act of showing up as fully themselves and finding, to their surprise, that they were not turned away. A second element in this story is one of mutuality. Jesus needed the water that the woman could provide. The woman needed the hope and spiritual fulfillment that Jesus could offer. Neither came to the well complete, but neither left unchanged either. This is the heart of authentic community, not charity flowing in one direction, but a genuine exchange, each person both giving and receiving, each recognizing that the other holds something they need. And the moment we begin to see ourselves only as givers or only as receivers, we have already begun to miss the point. When Jesus speaks of living water and eternal life, I hear him pointing not toward something remote or otherworldly, but toward values with proven track records of building community across every age and culture. They are the values that are like respect, inclusion, welcome, and the courage to see one another's full humanity. Here's where I find it more easily to define Jesus' concept of eternal life in this sense. It is the life that lasts because it is rooted in a love that refuses to diminish anyone. The woman at the well understood this intuitively. She didn't simply receive from Jesus and quietly go home. She gave back to her entire community. She ran back to her village and said, "Come and see." She became a bearer of living water herself, the first evangelist in John's gospel, sent not by appointment or ordination, but by the simple, unstoppable urgency of someone who has tasted something real. True community works this way. We do not come to one another as rescuers and recipients. We come as people with wells of our own to share, and as people with thirst who need one another. And in that honest exchange, when we stop pretending we have nothing to offer and stop pretending we have no needs, something holy happens. A third element of this story is an invitation to let living water flow among us. And here's where I want to share a personal story. 6 years ago, my parents sold a cottage in my father's childhood hometown. It was a safe haven, 4.5 hours northwest of St. John's, until property disputes made things unsettling and uncomfortable. My father felt forced to move his love of summer and rural life to the less desirable condo life in the city, which was Mom and Dad's permanent residence, a place he appreciated but suddenly loved less. The living water of clear streams and open fields felt far away. But he found his way back by visiting me in Pooch Cove, 25 minutes from the city, but with enough space for a garden and a greenhouse and opportunities to spend more time outdoors and talk to neighbors. Different, just different. My home became his retreat, a place of refreshment and renewal. It is important for us to find our own spaces of refreshment and renewal, whether those are physical spaces or personal practices or both. Where is your place of refreshment? Can you take a moment and picture it in your mind? Where is your safe haven? Where is your nourishing, refreshing place? Or picture something that you do to renew yourself. It could be the reading you do, or taking part in a study or discussion group, or being a part of the choir or another music gathering. Maybe it's as simple as taking a walk or sitting with a cup of coffee or tea and taking a few moments of contemplation and prayer. Sometimes renewal comes from change. I ministered in Pooch Cove, Balleen, the pastoral charge, for 12 years. Leaving there to come here to Emmanuel was a renewal of my call to ministry. As the United Church contemplates the changes that are taking place in all of our ministries, we are called to remember that our well, the well that is our Emmanuel United Church, is here to refresh and replenish each other. We are here to nurture the gifts and talents we bring. We're called to embrace change and be refreshed and replenished by new ideas and new initiatives and continuous energy. Spiritual refreshment means replenishing the energy of a community. It might mean retraining to strengthen the gifts and talents we carry together. It might mean more humor or more contemplation. It might mean something entirely new, something we cannot yet name but will recognize when it arrives, when it comes to meet us. So this Lent, as we journey toward Easter, let us take the Samaritan woman's story to heart. She may have came to the well alone in the heat of day, carrying the weight of a life lived at the margins, but she left as a messenger, running back to her community with news too good to keep to herself. Something had changed. Not her circumstances, not immediately, but her vision, her sense of what was possible, her understanding of who she was and what gifts she carried. May that be our story too. Let us continue to be Emmanuel United Church, a people who reach across the walls that our world builds. We do it not because it is easy, but because we have seen what lies on the other side. Let us be people who offer what we have and receive what we need, trusting that authentic community is not built on charity, but on the honest acknowledgement that we all come to the well with empty hands. Let us be people who keep the living water flowing by being who we are today, and also by who we might become tomorrow. May we acknowledge that we live in God's world and that we are not alone. The Spirit of living water is here among us. Let us discover how each of us can share that Spirit and message within. Here in this congregation, in this city, and in the wider world. Thanks be to God.